The Exile. The great halls of the alien palace were filled with light, but one room always stayed in shadow. Behind closed doors, far from the crowd, lived the princess no one wished to see. Her name was Soraya. She was born blind, her eyes pale and clouded, and her body weak compared to the strong warriors of her race. From the day she took her first breath, whispers followed her. Useless. Cursed. Why must she live? The aliens were a proud race built on honor and strength. To them, weakness was shameful, and blindness was a mark of failure. Every young alien was expected to form a sacred bond, a mental link with another. This bond was more than friendship. It was a connection of thought and soul, stronger than blood. Those who bonded could share energy, heal each other, and even fight as one. Without a bond, a person was incomplete. Without a bond, they had no place in society. And so as Soraya grew, everyone turned away from her. When other children trained in the courtyards, she sat alone, tracing patterns in the dust. When her people celebrated victories, she stayed locked in her chambers, hearing only the echoes of laughter through stone walls. No one reached out. No one offered her a hand. Years passed and Soraya became known as the Exile Princess. Though she lived inside the palace, she was treated as if she were already gone. Her father, the king, avoided her gaze. Her mother, once full of hope, stopped speaking of her altogether. The council whispered about ending her life quietly, saying it would save the royal bloodline from shame. But the king refused. Not out of love, but pride. Killing her would prove to the galaxy that his house was weak, and so he let her live, but only in silence. Soraya heard it all. She might have been blind, but she was not deaf. The servants who thought she could not hear, the soldiers who laughed in the halls, even the council members who argued late at night. She heard their words, and each word cut deeper than any blade. Still, she endured. She told herself she was more than her weakness, more than her broken body. Yet even her own heart began to doubt. The day of the bonding trials came. Every season, young aliens stood in the great square and chose their partners. The bond would flare to life in front of the people, bright light filling the air as two minds joined. The crowd cheered with every successful bond, the energy rippling through the square like fire. Soraya stood among them, her pale eyes staring at nothing. She could feel the crowd's eyes on her. She could hear their murmurs. Who would choose her? No one. She is cursed. She should not even be here. One by one, the bonds formed. Light after light filled the square. The air grew warm with power, joy, and pride. Then silence fell. Soraya remained alone. No hand reached for hers. No mind touched hers. Minutes passed. The silence stretched into shame. Finally, the council declared, "It is done." The crowd turned their eyes away. The princess stood still, her hands trembling, her heart breaking, though she showed no tears. From that day, the title Exile was no longer just whispers. It became law. She was marked unworthy. No one would be allowed to bond with her again. The nights after the trials were the hardest. Alone in her chamber, Soraya touched the stone walls, feeling the cold press against her skin. She thought of the warmth she had never known, the link she had never felt. Her people had bonds that made them stronger, faster, braver. She had nothing. But deep inside her, there was something they could not see. In the dark of her blindness, she saw shapes, colors, flickers of visions that did not belong to this world. She told no one, for if they knew, they would only call her mad. Still, the visions came. She saw fire in the skies. She saw shadows moving across stars. She saw herself reaching out into the void and someone reaching back. Yet in her lonely chamber, those visions felt more like a curse than a gift. She could not stop them. She could not understand them. And she could not share them. The galaxy moved on without her. Wars were fought, treaties signed, fleets launched. Soraya remained locked away, the forgotten princess in a palace of stone. But fate is strange. And destiny often hides in the most broken of places. For while the council whispered of ending her life, while her people turned away in shame, while even her own family refused to look upon her, far away among the stars, a human ship was coming, the one who would change everything, the one who would see her not as exile, not as curse, but as hope. And when their paths finally crossed, the galaxy would never be the same. The human arrival far beyond the alien palace among the stars, a small human ship drifted into orbit. It was not the largest vessel in the fleet nor the strongest, but inside, it was a man who carried something the aliens had forgotten: curiosity and kindness. His name was Daniel Hayes, an envoy of Earth. Humans had only recently entered the galactic stage. They were not the most advanced species, not the most powerful, but they had something that made the older races pause. Humans had the strange ability to adapt, to bond not only with each other but with anything they met: machines, worlds, and sometimes even alien hearts. Daniel had heard rumors before his arrival. Whispers of a cursed princess hidden away. He had been told by his guides, "Do not ask about her. She is not for you. She is the shame of her people." The warnings only made him curious. Why hide a princess? Why speak of her like a wound? When his shuttle landed on the palace platform, Daniel felt the weight of many eyes. The aliens were tall, strong, their armor gleaming in the sun. They looked at him as if he were a child walking among giants. Yet he walked with calm steps, offering greetings, his tone respectful but unafraid. At the grand feast held for him, the council spoke of trade, alliances, and treaties. Their voices were smooth, their words carefully chosen, but beneath them Daniel sensed pride, even arrogance. They believed their power unmatched. They believed humans were weak. But Daniel had learned something in his travels. Arrogance always hides fear. It was during this feast that he heard it again. A whisper at the edge of conversation. The blind one. The exile. Better if she were gone. Daniel set down his cup. "Who is she?" he asked, though he already knew. The hall grew quiet. The council members exchanged sharp glances. Finally, the High Advisor spoke. "A matter of no importance. Our princess is unfit. She cannot bond, and so she has no place among us. Speak no more of it." But Daniel's curiosity was not so easily buried. Later that night, when others slept, he walked the palace halls. He moved quietly, guided not by duty but by instinct. Something pulled at him, a strange feeling he could not explain. He found the chamber at the far end of a forgotten corridor. The guards at her door did not stop him. Perhaps they thought no one would care. Perhaps they thought it a waste of time. Inside, the room was dim. The princess sat near the window, though she could not see the stars beyond it. Her pale eyes turned toward the sound of his steps. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence felt heavy, like the pause before a storm. Finally, Soraya's voice broke it, low, quiet, yet steady. "You are not one of them." "No," Daniel said. "I am human. You should not be here. They will be angry. Let them be," he answered simply. She tilted her head as if trying to hear more than his words. She felt something different about him. His calm presence, the warmth in his tone. No fear, no disgust. No whisper of curse. "They say you are blind," Daniel said. She smiled bitterly. "They say many things." Instead of pity, Daniel only nodded. "And yet you still stand. That is strength." Her breath caught. No one had ever said that to her. For a moment, something stirred in the air between them, faint but undeniable. A spark. She felt it in her chest, like the first drop of rain on dry earth. The bond. It was weak, fragile, almost invisible, but it was there. Soraya's heart raced. "No," she whispered. "This is dangerous. If you try to bond with me, it could kill you." Daniel's lips curved into a small smile. "Maybe, or maybe it could save us both." Before she could reply, the door opened. The High Advisor stormed in with soldiers. His voice was sharp, cold with anger. "Human, leave this place. You do not know what you risk. If you attempt the bond, it will tear your mind apart. She is cursed. Do not touch her." Daniel did not move. He kept his eyes on Soraya. "I do not believe in curses." The soldiers shifted uneasily. They had seen something. A flicker of light in the air between the human and the exile princess. Something their people had sworn could never happen. The advisor hissed, "Leave now or you will never leave at all." Daniel finally stepped back, but not in defeat. His eyes told Soraya what his words did not. "I will return." When the soldiers dragged him away, Soraya sat trembling, her hands pressed to her chest. She could still feel the spark inside her, a bond weak but alive. For the first time in her life, she was not entirely alone. That night she dreamt. Not of shadows or fire, but of a hand reaching out through the dark, steady and warm. And far above the planet, in the silence of space, enemy ships moved unseen. A shadow was coming, One that would test not only the exiled princess, but the human who dared to see her differently. First contact, the next morning the palace buzzed with tension. Whispers moved faster than fire. The human had entered the exile's chamber. Guards spoke of a strange light between him and the blind princess. Servants gossiped that a bond, impossible, forbidden, had almost formed. The council tried to silence the rumors, but secrets never stayed hidden long. Daniel, however, was calm. He walked through the halls as though nothing had happened. He studied the murals on the walls, the carvings that told stories of victories and heroes. Yet one story was missing, the story of failure, the story of Soraya. The council summoned him at sunrise. The chamber was vast, the air thick with pride and threat. "You will leave today," the High Advisor commanded. "Your mission here is finished." Daniel folded his hands calmly. "Strange. I thought my mission was to learn about your people, to understand them. You misunderstand. What you saw in the exile's room, it was nothing. A trick of her broken mind. If you value your life, human, do not return to her." Daniel held the advisor's gaze. "If she is broken, why do you fear her so much?" The words struck like stones in still water. The council bristled, but none answered. Finally, the king himself spoke. His voice was heavy, worn by years of rule. "She is my daughter," he said, though the words sounded like a confession. "Not pride. She is my shame. Leave her be." Daniel bowed politely, but his mind was already decided. He would not leave. Not yet. That night he returned. The guards outside Soraya's chamber stared at him but did not move. Perhaps they were afraid. Perhaps they wanted to see what would happen. Inside, Soraya sat in silence. When she sensed him, she did not startle this time. Instead, a small smile touched her lips. "You came back," she said softly. "I told you I would." Her pale eyes turned toward him. "Why? You risk everything." Daniel stepped closer. "Because I think you are more than they believe, and because I think you know something they refuse to see." She hesitated, then whispered, "The visions." Daniel listened as she explained how since childhood, though blind, she had seen shadows of the future. Fleets moving in silence, stars burning, voices in the dark. She told him how her people had mocked her, called it madness, how she had learned to keep it secret. "But last night," she said, her voice trembling, "when you stood before me, the visions changed. I saw fire falling from the sky, yes, but I also saw light. A light only I could not make alone, a light that came from you." Daniel's chest tightened. He did not know if her visions were real, but something in her tone left no room for doubt. "Then maybe," he said gently, "we should try again." Soraya froze. "The bond," he nodded. "If it's there, even faint, we should see what it means." Fear gripped her. "Daniel, if the bond breaks, it will tear your mind apart. The council is right about that much." Daniel's voice was steady. "Or maybe it will hold. And if it does, you won't be alone anymore." Her hands trembled, but slowly she reached forward. He placed his hand in hers. Her skin was cold, fragile, but her grip carried a strength she didn't know she had. The moment their palms touched, the air shimmered. A faint glow spread between them, soft as dawn light. Daniel felt a tug in his mind, like a door creaking open. At first there was only static, shadows and whispers. Then slowly he heard her. "Daniel." Her voice echoed inside his head, faint but clear. He gasped softly. "I hear you." Soraya's eyes widened, though they saw nothing. Her lips parted, trembling. You hear me?" "Yes." His voice was rough with awe. "Not with ears. With mind." Tears slipped down her cheeks. For years she had been silent inside herself, locked away from all bonds. Now for the first time someone's thoughts touched hers. But the bond was fragile, unstable. Pain spiked through Daniel's head, sharp and searing. He clenched his jaw, refusing to let go. Soraya felt it too, the energy shaking, threatening to tear apart. "No," she cried, trying to pull back. "It's killing you!" Daniel's grip tightened. "Then we hold. Together." For one heartbeat, the glow flared brighter. In that instant, Soraya saw something, not with her blind eyes, but with her visions. She saw a dark fleet moving closer, ships hidden in shadow. She saw fire raining down on cities. She saw screams, and then she saw Daniel standing beside her, the light between them growing stronger, shielding worlds. Then the vision broke. The glow flickered out. Both of them collapsed, gasping for air. The bond had failed. For now, but it had been real. Soraya's chest heaved. You saw nothing, did you? Daniel shook his head. Only felt you. But that was enough. She swallowed hard. I saw what is coming. A war, a storm of fire, and we are meant to face it together. Before Daniel could answer, the chamber doors slammed open. Guards rushed in, eyes wide, weapons drawn. The council stood behind them, fury etched on their faces. You fool, the High Advisor hissed. Do you know what you have done? You have awakened a curse that should have died with her. But Daniel only rose to his feet, steady despite his pain. No, I think we awakened hope. The advisor's face darkened. Then hope will be punished. Above the planet, unseen in the vast silence of space, the first shadow of the enemy fleet crossed the stars, and the fragile bond between a human and an exiled princess had already begun to shape destiny. The hidden power. The palace did not sleep after that night. The council spread fear like smoke, whispering of danger, of madness, of curses awakened. Guards doubled at every gate. The king retreated to his chambers, silent and grim. And yet behind the walls of her exile, Soraya sat with a quiet fire in her chest. For the first time, someone had reached her. The bond was not strong, not steady, but it was real. It had carried Daniel's voice into her mind, had shown her a vision of what was to come. That spark still glowed inside her, fragile but alive. Daniel, though shaken, did not hide. He walked through the palace with steady steps, though every pair of alien eyes glared at him as if he were an invader. The council summoned him again. You will leave, the High Advisor thundered. Already your foolishness has weakened the princess. If you continue, both of you will fall. Daniel only asked one question. What are you so afraid of? The advisor's face darkened. You do not understand. The exile's visions are poison. They twist the truth, show only madness. If you feed that bond, it will spread like fire, and fire always burns, but Daniel was not convinced. He had seen enough in Soraya's trembling hands and tear-filled eyes to know her visions were more than madness. That night, when the palace was still, Daniel returned once more. Soraya waited for him, her face pale but resolute. They are furious, she whispered. I noticed, Daniel said with a faint smile. But I don't care. What matters is what you saw. Her voice trembled. The fleet, the fire, the war. Tell me everything, so she did. She described ships blotting out stars, weapons tearing through worlds, shadows darker than night. She told him of screams echoing through her mind, of fire raining down like storms. And she told him of one vision that returned again and again. Herself and Daniel standing together, light pouring from their bond as if it were a weapon itself. Daniel listened, his jaw tight. He did not doubt her. Too many times in his life he had seen those dismissed as weak prove to be the strongest of all. When she finished, Soraya lowered her head. But no one will believe me. They never have. Then we make them believe, Daniel said. How? She asked bitterly. I am blind, weak, and shamed. You are a foreigner they barely tolerate. To them, we are nothing. Daniel crouched before her, his voice steady. Then nothing is exactly where we begin. If the bond is our weapon, we will sharpen it until it cannot be ignored. The next days were dangerous. In secret, Daniel and Soraya met within her chamber. They practiced reaching for each other's thoughts, holding the fragile thread of connection until it nearly tore. Each attempt left them drained, shaking, sometimes in pain. But slowly, the bond grew steadier. Soraya began to sense Daniel's emotions clearly. His patience, his quiet courage, his stubborn refusal to give up. And Daniel began to glimpse pieces of her visions, flashes of fire, shapes of ships, shadows moving in the dark. They frightened him, but they also convinced him she was telling the truth. One night, their training took a strange turn. As their minds touched, Soraya gasped. Wait, there's something else. Something buried. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? Her voice was strained. It's not just visions, it's power. The bond flared suddenly, brighter than ever before. A pulse of energy filled the room, rattling the stone walls, flickering the torches. Daniel staggered back, stunned, while Soraya trembled as though she had been struck by lightning. When the glow faded, silence fell. Daniel's voice was rough. What was that? Soraya's lips trembled. I think it was me. The next day, the council stormed into her chamber. We felt it, the advisor spat. Do you think you can hide such things from us? You have awakened something dangerous and it will be destroyed. Soraya rose to her feet. her pale eyes unseeing but her face calm. If you destroy me, you destroy your only hope. Laughter rippled through the chamber, cruel and sharp. Hope? You are a curse, but Daniel stepped forward. Then let this curse speak, because while you argue, the enemy moves closer. The council scoffed, but unease flickered across their faces. For the first time, the word enemy carried weight. That night, Soraya told Daniel what she had discovered. The blindness. It is not only weakness. It is why I see what others cannot. Where their eyes see the world, mine see the layers beneath. Patterns, threads, futures. And now through the bond, that sight grows stronger. Daniel nodded slowly. Then it's not a curse. It's a gift, she smiled faintly. You are the only one who says so. He held her hand. Then let me be the first of many. The bond shimmered softly between them. Not bright, not steady, but alive. Far above, the enemy fleet drifted closer. Their ships were silent, hidden in the dark, moving like predators toward prey. The galaxy below remained blind to their approach, all except one, the princess who was never meant to bond. The exile who was never meant to see. The blind child who carried a hidden power strong enough to change everything. And with a human by her side, that power had finally begun to awaken. Rejection and betrayal. The bond had begun to grow, but so did the danger. The more Soraya and Daniel trained, the more the palace walls seemed to close in around them. Servants whispered of strange lights in the night. Guards reported unexplainable tremors near the exile's chamber. The council grew restless, their fear turning to anger. At last, the High Council called for a full assembly in the Grand Hall. Every noble, every warrior, every advisor stood beneath the towering arches. Even the king, who so often stayed silent, was present on his throne. Soraya was brought forward, her head held high, though she could not see the hostile stares. Daniel walked beside her, unflinching. The High Advisor's voice echoed through the hall. Behold the shame of our people. For years this blind child has been our burden. Now she seeks to poison us further, dragging a human into her madness. Together they claim to have bonded. We must end this before it destroys us. Murmurs filled the hall. Some scoffed, others sneered, but a few shifted uneasily. They had felt the energy, too. They had seen torches flicker and walls tremble. Daniel stepped forward. What you call poison may be your salvation. She sees what you cannot. She knows what is coming. Lies, the advisor roared. Her visions are nonsense. If we follow her, she will lead us into ruin. But Soraya's voice rang out clear and calm. The enemy fleet is already moving.
They are hidden in the dark between stars, preparing to strike.
You can deny me, but you cannot deny the fire that will soon fall upon us. The hall fell silent. For the first time, true fear flickered in the noble's eyes. The king shifted on his throne, his voice low and uncertain. You claim certainty, but where is the proof? Soraya lifted her chin. The bond. Through Daniel, my visions grow sharper. With him, I see threads of the future. Together we may stop what is coming. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A bond between a human and an alien was unheard of. Impossible. Dangerous. The advisor slammed his staff against the ground. Enough, this is treason against our blood. We cannot allow such corruption. The bond must be broken and the human expelled. The princess, if she cannot be cured, must be silenced. The word silence chilled the room. Everyone knew what it meant. Daniel's fist clenched. You would rather kill her than face the truth? You would rather cling to pride than survive? The advisor's eyes burned. Better death than shame. That night, betrayal struck. Daniel had been escorted to his quarters under heavy guard. But Soraya was not so lucky. Her chamber was stormed by soldiers. They seized her arms, dragging her into the dark. She struggled, her voice sharp with defiance. Where are you taking me? To the place where shame ends, one soldier muttered. Her heart pounded. Execution. They meant to erase her quietly. Before her bond could grow, before her voice could rise again. But the bond, faint though it was, carried her fear across the palace. Daniel woke with a jolt, her terror echoing in his chest. He pushed past guards, fought through corridors, following the thread of her mind like a beacon. He found her at the edge of the palace cliffs, the wind howling, soldiers raising their weapons. Stop, Daniel shouted. The soldiers turned, startled. Their leader sneered. This is not your affair, human. Leave while you still live. Daniel's eyes blazed. Her life is my affair. The bond flared between them, unsteady but fierce. Soraya felt his strength surge through her, steadying her trembling legs. And for a heartbeat, the glow burst into light again, illuminating the cliff. The soldiers staggered back, fear flickering in their eyes. No curse could glow with such power. But before they could act, the High Advisor himself arrived. His face twisted with fury. So it is true. The bond lives. He raised his staff, energy crackling. Then I will end it now. Lightning arced from his staff, striking the ground near Daniel. Stone shattered, sparks flying. Soraya cried out, the vision of fire filling her mind once more. Daniel pulled her close, shielding her. Run, he whispered. No, Soraya gasped. If we run, they will never stop. We must stand. Her words carried more strength than her body should allow. Daniel met her sightless eyes and nodded. Together they reached for the bond. Pain seared through them both, but the glow flared brighter. A wall of light burst outward, throwing the soldiers back. The advisor staggered, his staff shaking in his grip. When the light faded, Soraya and Daniel stood hand in hand. Shaken, gasping, but unbroken. The advisor hissed, "This is not strength. This is corruption. You are cursed, both of you." But the soldiers hesitated. They had seen the light. They had felt its force. And in their hearts, doubt had begun to take root. Later, when they were safe again in her chamber, Soraya trembled. They will never accept us, no matter what we show them. Daniel took her hand, firm and steady. Then we don't live for their acceptance. We live for the ones who will need us when the fire comes. She turned her face toward him. And if it comes sooner than we think? He held her gaze. Then we fight. Together. And above them, in the cold void of space, the enemy fleet drifted closer still. The awakening. The days after the attack on the cliffs were heavy with silence. The council no longer tried to hide their hatred. Soldiers watched Daniel like a predator waiting for weakness. Soraya's chambers, once ignored, were now surrounded by guards who never looked away. It was clear. The leaders of her people had made their choice. They would rather see her destroyed than allow her bond to grow. But something had changed. The failed execution had not broken Soraya. If anything, it had lit a fire in her. She no longer kept her head bowed. She stood taller. Her pale eyes turned toward a horizon she could not see but somehow sensed. The visions had grown sharper. Every night she saw more. Dark ships, silent armies, fire raining on cities, and within that fire, herself and Daniel glowing like a shield. Daniel saw it too, not the visions, but the strength that was waking inside her. The princess who had been forgotten was no longer quiet. She was becoming something her people could not explain, something they feared even more than her weakness. One evening, as they trained in secret, the bond shifted again. Soraya reached for Daniel's hand, and the glow answered instantly. It no longer flickered weakly, it pulsed steady, warm, alive. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. Daniel nodded. "It's stronger, like it's breathing with us." Their minds touched, sharper than ever before. This time Daniel did not only feel her emotions. He saw flashes through her eyes, not sight of the world, but the strange visions she carried. He saw shadows of enemy ships crawling across the stars. He saw fire striking a city's towers. And then he saw something stranger. Himself standing beside her, their bond blazing like a weapon. He staggered. "I saw it." "Your visions." For the first time, Soraya's lips trembled. "Then it's true. The bond is growing." The glow surged, filling the room. For a heartbeat, the walls themselves seemed to hum. Soraya gasped as power flooded her veins. Her weakness vanished, replaced by strength that made her body feel new. Daniel felt it too. The pain from training, the exhaustion of days without sleep. It melted away under the bond's light. He had never felt more alive. But the surge carried danger. Too much power at once. The energy rippled outward, shaking the palace foundations. Guards outside the chamber staggered, alarmed. When the glow finally faded, both of them collapsed, breathing hard. Daniel laughed weakly. "If that's what a bond can do when it's still young, I don't want to know what happens when it's full." Soraya lay beside him, her face pale but alive. Maybe that is what the visions meant. We are not meant to fight alone. We are meant to awaken together. The council did not see it that way. At dawn they stormed into her chamber once more. The High Advisor's face was red with fury. "You endanger us all." The palace trembles, the very stones cry out with your corruption. "You are not awakening, you are unraveling." Soraya stood tall, though her hands shook. "You fear me because I no longer bow. You fear him because he gives me strength. But your fear will not stop what is coming, the advisor sneered. If the enemy is truly near, then it is because you called them. You and this human are a beacon for ruin. Daniel stepped between them. You blind yourselves with pride. You can feel the storm building. Pretend all you want, it won't change the truth. The king, who had remained silent for so long, finally spoke. His voice was weary, almost broken. If the fleet truly comes, then perhaps her visions will prove true. But even so, what then? What can one broken princess and one foreigner do against the dark? Soraya lifted her chin. Together we will be enough. Her words silenced the hall, not because they believed, but because she spoke them without fear. That night, as the palace slept uneasily, Soraya and Daniel trained again. This time they did not focus on control. They let the bond flow freely. The glow wrapped around them, steady and strong. Soraya felt Daniel's heartbeat as if it were her own. Daniel felt the sharp edges of her visions, the weight of her loneliness, the depth of her courage. They were no longer two separate souls, they were one. And in that unity, something new stirred. The bond shifted, not only into vision or strength, but into power that reached beyond their bodies. The air rippled around them. Objects in the room lifted slightly, floating. The ground hummed like a drum. Soraya gasped. The bond. It's not just for seeing. It's for shaping. Daniel's eyes widened. Shaping what? She shook her head slowly. The world itself. The glow flared again, brighter than ever. For the first time, she did not feel weak. She felt alive, her body strong, her voice unshaken. She turned her face toward the stars outside, and for the first time in her life, she smiled. This is my gift, she whispered. Not blindness. Not curse. Power. And with you, Daniel, it awakens. Daniel looked at her, and in that moment he believed. But far above, the shadow fleet had drawn closer. Their ships had already locked onto the planet. Their commanders watched from the dark, sensing the strange surge of energy rising from the palace. One of them hissed in their alien tongue. The beacon awakens. Destroy it before it grows. The enemy fleet shifted silently into attack formation, and below, Soraya and Daniel, still glowing with the power of their bond, had no idea that the first wave of war was already on its way. The triumph. The first attack came without warning. High above the planet, the enemy fleet tore out of the shadows, dark ships blotting out the stars. Fire rained from the skies, striking the capital's towers, shattering walls and shaking the palace itself. The proud race that had mocked weakness now screamed in fear. The council scrambled, their arrogance stripped away. Orders clashed, soldiers scattered, and the once mighty defenses fell into chaos. The people had never faced an enemy like this, and they were not ready. But in the heart of the storm, two figures stood together, Daniel and Soraya. The bond between them pulsed stronger than ever before. The roar of collapsing stone, the screams outside the palace, the tremors underfoot, they felt it all. And yet within the glow of their connection, there was calm. Soraya's visions flared bright. She saw the enemy ships moving in patterns, weaving their attack like a net. She saw where they would strike before they fired. Through her blindness, she saw everything. Daniel gripped her hand. Tell me what you see. Her voice was steady. The fleet. Their movements. If we guide your soldiers, we can break their net before it closes. Daniel nodded. Then let's move. They burst into the war chamber where the council argued like frightened children. The high advisor's face twisted in fury at the sight of them. You dare return now? This is your fault. Soraya's voice cut through the chaos. Enough. While you waste breath, the enemy burns our cities. If you want to live, listen to me. For the first time, the chamber fell silent at her words, not because they respected her, but because the ground shook again with another strike, and desperation leaves little room for pride. Daniel spread the star maps on the table. She can see their movements. If we act through her visions, we can anticipate the attacks. Give us command of your fleet, the advisor laughed bitterly. A blind exile and a foreigner? You expect us to hand our warriors to you? But then the king spoke, his voice heavy. Do you have another choice? The silence that followed was answer enough. The battle raged. From the command chamber, Soraya guided Daniel, and Daniel guided the fleet. Every strike the enemy planned, she saw first. Every trap they set, she warned of. Slowly, the tide shifted, but the enemy had realized the truth. Their commander hissed, the beacon guides them. Target the princess. End her, and their strength dies. A wave of fire rained directly toward the palace. Daniel pulled Soraya close, shielding her with his body. The blast tore through the walls, stone and fire crashing down. Pain seared his side, but he refused to let go. The bond flared in response, wrapping them in light, shielding them from the worst of the blow. Soraya gasped, clutching his hand. "You're hurt." He forced a smile. "Doesn't matter. Stay with me." The glow between them pulsed brighter, as if feeding on his pain, her fear, and their defiance. Power surged outward, a shield of light rising above the palace. Enemy fire struck it, but the shield held. The people below looked up in shock. The princess they had cast aside was now protecting them. The curse had become their salvation, but the battle was not over. Soraya saw it, a massive enemy ship moving into position, preparing a final strike strong enough to shatter the planet's defenses once and for all. Her voice shook. "If it fires, everything is lost." Daniel's eyes met hers. "Then we stop it. How?" "Together." He clasped her hands, closing his eyes. "Don't fight the bond. Let it take everything. Don't hold back." Fear clutched her chest, but she obeyed. The bond surged, brighter than ever before. Pain lanced through them both, but they held on. The chamber trembled, the air rippled, and the glow erupted into a beam of pure energy, shooting upward into the skies. The beam struck the enemy ship just as it charged its weapon. For a moment, the sky was torn apart by light. Then the ship exploded, fire scattering across the stars. The fleet faltered. Their formation broke. One by one, they fled into the shadows, leaving the world behind. Silence fell. The war was over. The palace stood cracked and broken, but alive. The people poured into the streets, staring at the shield of light still glowing faintly above them. Whispers turned to cries, and cries turned to cheers. The exile saved us, and the humans saved us. No, they saved us together. Soraya and Daniel collapsed to their knees, the bond fading back to a soft glow. Daniel's wound bled, but he was alive. Soraya, though trembling, stood straighter than she ever had. The king approached, his face unreadable. At last he bowed his head before his daughter. "Forgive us. We were blind, and you, though blind, saw everything." Soraya turned her pale eyes toward the crowd. For once their voices did not sting. For once she was not exile, not shame. She was hope. Daniel stood beside her, steady as ever. "This is only the beginning. The bond is not just ours. It shows what's possible between our peoples. Between all peoples." Soraya's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then let this bond be the first light of many." Above them, the stars were quiet again. But deep in the dark, the enemy still watched, waiting. The war was not finished, but the galaxy had changed. A blind princess and a human had rewritten destiny, and their bond had only just begun.